Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to our April DTL webinar on Creative Communicator. We have some announcements before we get started. So we have an exciting event going on at the West Jordan High School, and that is School AI PD Day training. So that is the district PD Day on the 12th of April. This will be at 1 p.m. So after your morning, whatever you have at your school, you can come on over and learn some more about School AI. The DTL end of year survey will be sent out by Friday. Please watch for that as it provides money for the grant. So it's super important that you take it and that you encourage your teachers to take it. So just encourage everybody around you to take that. Please submit your tech training numbers via the reporting link. It's on the DTL Canvas course. It's also mailed out to your coaches. So that reminder's mainly for the digital coaches, but we really need those numbers. So if you could do that, we'd appreciate that. So for today's webinar, we will just have one session. Colby and I decided to combine forces. It's his and my day. And being that a lot of the Creative Communicator falls under Canva and Adobe, we didn't really want anybody to miss out on either one of those things. So for today, when we're talking about Creative Communicator, we're talking about Standard 1.6. And this is that students communicate clearly and express themselves creatively for a variety of purposes using the platforms, tools, styles, formats, and digital media appropriate to their goals. So when that happens, we need to make sure that our goals align with whatever that goal is for them to get the message back over to us. And so in our agenda today, we're going to talk about visual communication, why, and get some ideas. And that will be mainly discussed by Colby. Let's kind of go back and forth on that. And then podcasting. And I've got some Adobe podcasts that are coming up, and we're going to hear from Kira, even though she's not with us today. We're going to hear a little bit from her on really how easy this is to get started with Adobe podcasting. So Colby, I will let you go ahead and share your screen if you would like. I'll stop sharing. Oh, unless you'd like me to go over the why.
No, I'll take it over.
Perfect. Okay.
That's fine. Oops, hold on. Okay. All right. Are you seeing my slides now?
We are.
This should be the same thing. Okay. All right. So yeah, we're talking about visual communication first. And I really like this report that it's something that Canva put out. It's called the Visual Economy Report, talking about just how we live in a world that really is highly visual. I'm going to play this quick reel about the report, but it is all linked here, and you'll have access to these slides from the Canvas course if you want to like view the report. But this kind of explains a little bit about why we care so much about visual communication.
Did you know that 89% of global business leaders use visual communication to keep their remote teams engaged? Stay tuned because I'm going to share more findings like this one. Let's go. Recently, Canvas surveyed 1,600 global business leaders to better understand the impacts of visual communication across teams. And we packaged up our findings into what is the first of its kind, the Visual Economy Report. Here are some more stats that will blow you away.
Oops. I accidentally clicked.
Did you know that 89% of global business leaders...
Anyway, she goes on to talk about how, like in this report where they surveyed these business leaders, they found that the majority of business leaders agree that visual communication tools increase efficiency, enhance collaboration, carry more authority, and have a positive return on investment, and how like just in the world today that you have to have your content be visually pleasing or else you lose people's interest. So with like the rise of social media, we see that like people's attention spans are shrinking, where you have about a 47 seconds to catch people's attention or else you lose them if you're not engaging them visually. And so it's really important that we help our students to gain the skills that they're going to need both now and in their future to be effective visual communicators. And so that's why we utilize our big six, but especially these two tools, Adobe and Canva, kind of our main tools for visual design. And so I'm going to kind of go through a few just quick ideas on how you or your teachers, if you're a coach, how you can help your teachers utilize these tools that we all have access to build students' visual communication skills. And so some of these are pretty simple, like posters. Posters are really great, like entry level type of project that you can have students do, where they're pretty familiar with a poster. They've all seen posters. They've probably made posters before, even if even the littles have made posters in some way or in the past. But it helps them learn things like layout, color theory, typography, even just like making sure that their colors contrast enough that you can see the text. But it's really practical, hands-on way to get your students communicating that they're not just using text, but they have to include a lot of visual to communicate their message. And with posters, um, Canva always says you should start inspired because they have a huge template library for all of their designs, but they have a lot for posters as well. So if you just search for posters, you'll see over 100,000 poster templates. So you and your students don't have to start from scratch. You can start inspired, as they say, with a template, and then just make the tweaks and changes that you need to make to fit your message and to fit your audience. And the same thing applies to Adobe Express. If you just click on the poster style in Adobe Express, they have over 1,000 templates as well for posters. So you can find both of those. And with the standard today, one of the main things that it focuses on is making sure that you tailor your design or your communication to your audience. And so these are like some reflection questions to help you make sure, or you or your students make sure that you're really tailoring your designs to meet the audience, or to meet the needs of the audience that you're communicating with. So like, what is your message? Who is your audience? What do you want them to do? What's your call to action? Do you asking them to do something, or is it simply just a matter of this is new information? What types of visuals would be effective for your message? And then really good thing for students to think about is this meant to be something that's printed, primarily print, or is it going to be digital? Because that's going to impact what they can put on their poster. If it is printed, you can't add like video because obviously they can't play video with a printed poster, but you could add something like a QR code that people could scan to access digital content. And there's a few examples of posters here. And then these are some posts on what is formerly called Twitter, of different projects that teachers have done with their students, where they're making posters with Canva. So you can see some examples there of teachers, like this third grade example where they created, these are flyers actually, with their as their final writing projects. There you can see that they're visual, but they also have some writing. They're communicating a message. Really good entry-level way of getting your students doing visual design, visual communication. Infographics are another great one. A little bit more involved, a little bit higher order thinking with infographics. I liked this like Venn diagram here about what makes a good infographic. How to really be a good infographic, it has to have good design, good data, it has to tell a story, and it has to be shareable in some way or another. And if it's not, then it's not going to really be a good infographic. If it's missing that story, it has all the other three, then it's boring. If it's missing the design, but it has data, story, and shareability, then it's kind of seems amateur because it doesn't have that design. It doesn't look as good as, and it's not going to communicate the message as clearly as we would like. So there's a video here. I'm not going to play it, but it just talks about what makes an effective infographic, building on some of these similar ideas. And then here's some steps to make an infographic. Just like with posters, students can start inspired. You as a teacher can start inspired when you're creating, there's templates for infographics on both Canva and Adobe Express that you can start from and then adapt to fit your needs. And again, some more examples of teachers using this in the classroom with various grade levels to have them creating infographics that fit their various content. So again, can be done with any grade level. You can have them creating and learning visual communication through infographics, presentations, same idea. Even
Hey, Colby,
storybooks. Yeah.
on those posters and the infographics, what if I have like elementary students? How do I get them to share that back to you as a teacher?
So generally, we recommend people use Canvas generally the best way. So if you're already utilizing Canvas, that works. They also have the ability to be able to do it with Google Classroom. There is some functionality within Canva. We can set up classes and have them turn it in through Canva. It's not something that Canva is necessarily encouraging if you already have an LMS. It's just kind of a solution if you aren't using an LMS. But there is that functionality. They could also just share it with you. The problem with that is then it's hard to find them. Like you have to look through your emails or through your Canva to find them. So it's best to utilize some kind of LMS like Canvas to have them submit those.
Thanks.
So Storybooks is another one that you can use the visual communication, but you can also add like another layer where you find again a storybook template, have your students create their storybook, and then you can have them turn them into narrated storybooks where they can use the record yourself feature and record themselves reading their book as well. So then in the design, when they share that back with you or they share it with their audience, it will play the audio as they advance to each page. And so there's a video here that kind of walks through this. But the main thing to understand with this is that when you use the record yourself, it's going to create a video. It's not going to just create audio, it's a video. And then what you have to have your students do is just take that video and make it completely transparent so it doesn't show up. So it will have their face or it will just have a picture if they don't turn on their camera. And if they make that transparent and just set it to play automatically, which it presets to play automatically, then it will just advance, and every time they advance the page, it will just play the audio. So it's really a nice way of creating a narrated storybook that has both the visual side and the audio, combine that multimedia. And then, okay, here's some examples. This teacher here, he just says like he highly recommends that you write a storybook with your kids. So for little kids, have them write their stories. Then you can use Canva to help them have them create their pictures for the book. And then if you want to even print it so they can give it to parents and grandparents, like that can be something that's really fun for kids to do. And then video. Video is the dominant form of media with things like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. Like this is what we see is what's getting people's attention, short form video. And so Canva can be used for creating short form video. It's something that students are likely familiar with, but they probably haven't spent a ton of time thinking about what goes into generating this video. And so it can be a really engaging thing that they're invested in because they want to know more about creating video and what goes into that because they see it all the time. But it is highly visual, and then it's combining that media. And so there are mobile video templates on Canva as well. If you are really interested in using Canva for video, I did a pre-recorded session at USET that you can access, although when you go get these slides, learn all about using Canva for video. This is a link to a project you could do with your students on documentaries if you want to use Canva for video. There's a whole set of tips and tricks. And then I really like this example. I share this one all the time. I talk about video, where this teacher talks about a 5th grade class sharing their final social studies project with a 3rd grade class. They use Canva to create a video. It was a documentary about Thanksgiving, historically accurate first Thanksgiving after they had studied this and analyzed primary sources. So I think that's a really good example because it has an authentic audience built in. So those 5th graders had to think about how can I present this message to 3rd graders after studying this through primary sources. And so they have to think about their audience, how to creatively communicate that, how to do it visually, combining elements like audio and video and photo all together to create that story. And in our team, we see that members of our team are doing this all the time with our Instagram page and creating short form videos with tips for teachers and content to engage teachers and share with teachers. So even like this short, this is one of our tiny tips. We'll just play this real quick.
Tiny tip. Did you know if you press T when you're in Google Calendar, it will take you straight to today? Tiny tip.
So again, just something really simple. It has, visual, it has audio, it's communicating to teachers very quickly, so something that they may not know. That's a little quick tip. And then I'll play one more video. This is one from yesterday, introducing what we're going to be talking about next, which is podcasting. And I'll play parts of this as well.
Let's get this party started.
Hey teachers, this week we are going to be talking about podcasts. Studies show that listening to podcasts improves empathy, it improves visualization, it lowers stress, it lowers the amount of screen time that you watch, and it improves your listening comprehension. Implementing diverse cultures, landmarks, and foods. We're going to be talking about podcasts all week this week, not only listening to podcasts in your classroom, but kids making podcasts. So be sure to tune in every single day for some really great podcast ideas.
So this week, tune into our Instagram to learn more about podcasting, but I'm actually going to turn the time to Larisa now to talk to you more about podcasting. Larisa, you're muted still. I don't know if you are talking.
That's the good thing to get me muted, probably. The podcast thing, it makes me laugh because I think about the building empathy. My favorite podcasts are all about crimes. So I don't know who I'm more empathetic for, is the victims or who. I don't know why I'm doing that, but I love to listen to the podcast. And one great way is of students demonstrating their understanding is to actually produce something for a podcast. So Kira, we're going to listen to Kira talk about how easy it is to use Adobe Podcast for you to help your students with a podcast.
Exciting news! Podcasting with your students just got a whole lot easier on Chromebooks with Adobe Podcasts. So Adobe Podcasts just got approved for K-12 compliance. So all you have to do is go to podcast.adobe.com, sign in with your Jordan District account information, and to get started, you click on New Project. Here's your recording studio. All of your tools are on the left-hand side. You have the recording button down below. Up here on the top right, you can invite guests so students can work collaboratively and create sitting their own podcast. They can download the audio and the transcript of what they said. And teachers can create a template to then share with students. So if they're just getting started, you can basically give them a script using these placeholder buttons to tell them first do this, then say this, and then wrap up your podcast with this thought. So it makes it super easy to get started, all from your Chromebook.
It really is that easy. And in order for me to kind of learn how to do that, I just hopped on a YouTube video. So we can come out and show you how to do that. If you want to get started, I did include this graphic. So I'll put this down in the chat, and it will also be in our webinar series so that you can see this infographic that I created just so that you could get started. It is this easy. You simply log in, you go to your studio, and you start creating. And once you're in and doing that, you can really invite your students to just take advantage of that. So with the with the Adobe Podcast, it is in beta. So you do need to log in with Adobe Podcast. And I do have the link on there to show you how to do that as well. There is enhanced spoken audio, and you can edit, and then you can easily take out parts of the speech. So if I was to say a couple times, or I said the same thing over and over, I can actually just remove the or remove the whatever I repeated myself. I could take that out in the podcast. It really is like super easy. And then there is some music that you can add. There's also a part where it will show you like the intro and the transitions. And so it will allow them to put in the different recordings for different phases of a podcast. Now, how do students share that back to the teacher? Obviously, we recommend Canvas in order to do that. And they can share it back in a file upload and just have them share it back with an MP4. That way the teachers can have access to it easily. They also could, if you didn't want to do a podcast on Adobe Podcast, they actually could do a podcast in this media section and then just record themselves doing talking back with the audio. So those are two options that they can have with the podcast. That Adobe Podcast makes it just super slick. So we want to thank you
So
for joining.
Larissa,
Yeah.
just to add, like, we're really actually really excited about Adobe Podcasts. What Larissa was talking about, where she said you could, if you're adding, like, if you're saying or so, I say so a lot. I know I do. You'll see that in the transcript, and you just delete it from the transcript, and it deletes it from the audio. So it's not like you have to go in and find that exact spot when you're playing it and previewing it. You just look at the transcript, and like it says, edit audio like a doc. You just delete it from the transcript, and it deletes that part of the audio as well. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
And so simple for students to use too. Like with the pre-recorded royalty-free music, like the pre-edited, it has it set so you can choose like the type of music you want, and then it has an intro and an outro and transitions. Like it is all there for students to just create really high quality podcasts right in this pretty simple to use tool. So we are excited about Adobe Podcasts.
Yeah, and it's like you heard from Casey in that little clip for the Instagram. You heard from Casey, from Colby as well, that it's really, students are interested in that, and they are listening to more podcasts. They're hearing more about it. So they get it, and they want to be able to express themselves in those ways. So us providing that for them makes them the creative communicator back to us, and just gives another option. And when you do paper pencil, you just limit so much. But being able to provide the presentations and the posters and the podcast in order for the students to explain their learning and their understanding just enhances that. It increases their learning and understanding, and really it's more engaging for you. I don't know about you, but I'm not really into reading 5-paragraph essays from 5th graders. I really enjoy when I get the poster and it quickly tells me what they do or don't understand, and I can move on with our lessons. But they were engaged and excited about it, and they come home talking about it. I know, because I have a 4th grader who, when she gets to participate in these podcasts, she tells me every time, or when she gets to do the posters, and she's addicted to Canva just like us, from being able to be exposed to it at school and being able to produce her own understanding through visual arts. So with that being said, as the digital learning specialist, we are always willing to come out and show you all of these fun and exciting ways to engage your students. Get in touch with us at any time. You can reach us on the web at digitallearning@jordandistrict.org, at X, formerly known as Twitter. You can look us up on the Instagram page, because Casey's been doing an excellent job of keeping up on everything we're doing here. You can also listen to the Jordan Journey podcast and Jordan Teaching and Learning on YouTube. If you have any questions, you can ask them now.
I had a question about Adobe posters through Express. I usually use that for my students, but they started to notice that some of the students weren't able to download their posters anymore because it was locked behind premium. And it wasn't before. Do we know if there's like, I mean, obviously I've been having them just switch over to Canva, but like it seemed inconsistent. Like some of my students could download, some couldn't. Do we have any idea like what's causing that, or if that's going to be something that's kind of permanent? Because I usually would have them download it, upload it to Canvas so I could grade it, but.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. What we've found with Adobe Express, well, all the Adobe products actually, is for some reason the login with Google is not like authenticating the right way. So students are getting into this like the free version when they try to log in with Google. So when you see that, if it's behind the paywall, it shouldn't be. So what they need to do is they need to log out completely, and then log back in. And instead of using the sign in with Google or going through the waffle, they need to log in using just their Jordan School District email and type it into the email spot. It won't even require them to have a password, because it will recognize that. They just put in their email and then make sure if it asks, they have to put enterprise or like for schools, and then it usually fixes that issue.
Okay.
But yeah, it is a known issue that we've seen come up a little bit. And even with us, like as teachers, when I tried to log in with Google, it was not taking me to the premium account. So you have to use the email So continue with email and then type in the email address. And for some reason that works, but it doesn't work with the continue with Google.
Interesting.
Then you use the company
good
or
to know.
school. Yeah. Good question. Thanks for asking that. Just like that.
Colby, you might want to also mention that if the students have that where it says try the premium up here, that's a good indicator that they're not logged in to the right place. So if it says try premium up in the corner, then they need to just log themselves back out and come back in the way that Larisa just showed.
Yeah. A good point. Any other questions?
I have a quick question. What do you think is like the sweet spot? How many minutes do you think a student podcast should be?
I'll talk about that for a minute, just because I was in the younger grades. So with Flipgrid was a very good introduction to podcasting in a sense, because they could kind of talk back and forth. And we really wanted to keep that less than 3 minutes because the rambling, they just didn't really understand that. So I would say for a younger grade would be like third grade, especially third and younger, 1 to 3 minutes. And really honestly, up until, or like 10-year-olds, they can do a presentation for 5 minutes. That is a good solid presentation. Anywhere between the 5 and 7 mark is good for 10-year-olds. And then you can increase that as they get older, but that would be it. That sweet spot for 10-year-olds is that 5 to 7 mark. But I would, if I was doing second grade, third grade, I'd keep it at 2 minutes. You don't really want to listen to a lot of rambling. Anyone else have any opinion about that? You can let me know.
I agree with you, Larissa. Based on my experiences, different grades, it's for younger grades they need less. And even with upper, like a couple of weeks ago, I had the lesson in 5th grade, and they had to record themselves. And some of them spent only like a minute just to do their hair. And so it wasn't even nothing about the topic. It's all about them presenting themselves first. So yeah, even like talk about how do you begin? Have a script, have something written in front of their eyes before they record themselves.
Thanks, Elena. I think that is excellent advice. And you saw that a little bit in Kira's Instagram post where she talks about how you can actually give them script prompts inside the Adobe podcast. And that is super helpful.
I think even for high school, they need to have it pretty short. Otherwise, they do, like you say, start rambling on with who knows what.
Thanks, Mary. I do appreciate that too. How much do we actually want to listen to? And the more concise that they can be, I think the better their understanding of the topic is.
Yeah, and the topic, I think, is good for topic, but also it's good for developing those professional skills going forward in life in the middle school, in a high school, and then to college. It's what your professional talk should look like.
Yeah, so I one of the teachers that I was working with talked about how she's been thinking a lot about how she's taught in the past. So she teaches AP European history. And she doesn't feel like the way that she's taught in the past is necessarily going to work moving forward with just all the changes we see with like AI and all the new up and coming things. And so one of the things that she's really interested in is having her students create a podcast. So these would be AP students, but at the end of each unit, she wants them to create a podcast episode on like that topic about that unit, something about that unit. And then by the end of the school year, if they do that for each unit, they'd have a whole season of podcasts exploring like AP European history topics. And I think that's like a really great example of like creating something that can be an artifact for these students moving forward that they can showcase in like a portfolio. Like I have the ability to create these podcasts that, you know, are professional quality and really well done. And so I don't think that that has to be limited to just AP students. I think that you could do similar things, and doesn't have to be just a season of podcasts, but any kind of like visual communication, audio communication like this can be a great way for your students to showcase their skills and build skills that will translate to the world outside of school as well.
What a fantastic idea. I would love to have had a portfolio at the end of 5th grade US history, of being able to kind of go back through and know of what we talked about throughout the whole thing. That would be fantastic. That's a great idea.
Especially in 6th grade, social studies curriculum. It's like a treasure.
It would be a treasure, wouldn't it, Helena? Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We will have this recorded and up onto our DTL Canvas course so that you can encourage anybody else to go back and look at that, or you can go back and review some of the podcasts or Adobe or the posters, anything that we've talked about. You can also reach out to us anytime. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you for being here.